Welcome to Project Homestead. This is our final project for CPE 185. This is a project made through Rodrigo, Daniel, Alyssa, and Michaela. Before we get into our presentation, we just want to talk about the general manipulation as well as project synopsis for our project. The vision for this project was to have a GUI application which would take in user input and set off the appropriate appliances through that user input. In order to do this, we extracted the user input through a PHP signal. This signal then stored the input as a text file, which denoted either 1 or 0. Through this, we sent out this information to another Pi, which was a driver Pi. This driver Pi then ran the appropriate commands in order to emulate the appliance we wanted to run. The first appliance we created was the DC motor through a fan. In order to apply this appliance, we had to take into consideration magnetic flux, which was different than all the other appliances. Due to this, we implemented a transistor as well as a diode. This implementation led to a little bit different code as opposed to the other ones. We had to use the PWM class that comes with the Pi, and we had to do p.change duty cycle 80 to actually run the motor.
Then I made a design for a lock that can also be controlled wirelessly. I wired up a servo motor to power, ground, and GPIO ports on the Raspberry Pi. Then I created another data file that contains the input 0 or 1. I wrote code to read the file and turn the servo motor to 0 or 90 degrees according to the input. I implemented this idea to use as a lock for the smart home. I created a program that would accept input from data files to control 2 different sets of LEDs wirelessly. I wired up the different LEDs to GPIO ports on the Raspberry Pi and created data files that contain the input 0 or 1. I wrote code to read the files and turn the LEDs on accordingly. I implemented this idea into upstairs and downstairs lights in the smart home.
So one of the first things that we needed to decide was where our website would be hosted on what server. And we thought that the Raspberry Pi would fit that since we can install different kinds of applications. We set up LAMP to host our server data, and the application that we ended up installing to the Pi was called Apache. So after we installed Apache to the Pi, we ended up testing the server and it worked. It ended up displaying a "it works" page, so we knew that it was actually live. The only issue was that it wasn't our HTML code with our website. So when we tried to go in and edit it, the Apache wouldn't let us since it denied our permissions. So after looking online for a while, we found a code that actually granted us permissions to edit, change, and copy and move, rename files. So then we put our HTML code into there and it worked, but it still displayed a really ugly page. It was very bland. It was white. It didn't look anything like what we intended it to. So I ended up installing PHP to the Raspberry Pi on top of that, so it can actually have our PHP files and our CSS files. So after we put that onto there, we put those files into the server folder. It ended up working and we really liked it. It came out really nice, but it still looked a little plain. So I ended up designing a banner for our website homepage, and I used Illustrator to create it, and we coded the PNG file into our header.
So for this portion, I created a temperature sensor. First, it was used in C, and then I attached it to the Raspberry Pi, and then I used Python to give an accurate reading of the current humidity and the temperature that the house was taking in. Next, I used an OLED display. This presented the current temperature and humidity and displayed Project Homestead when it was set to idle. This used I2C communication protocol and Python. And then to put together the house, I wired together LEDs to create panels that would sit inside of the housing unit.